Hello and welcome to the Chapter 5, Chapter 6 review for the test. And this is going to be done in a couple different parts. So this part is going to start with question 1 and go through question 5 or 6 or so. Question 1 says sketch the angle theta as a negative 250 in standard position. So that means we are going to, because it's negative, we're going to start at 0 and we're going to go around clockwise. And so to here would be pi or negative pi, which would be 180. And 180 plus 90 would be 270. So it would be 270 would be here. So negative 250 is going to be right about here. So that is going to be theta. Number 2 says sketch the angle x equals 8 pi over 5 in standard position. So it's a positive angle. So we're going to start and go counterclockwise at 0. And this is pi, which in this case would be 5 over 5. But this is 8 pi over 3. I'm sorry, 8 pi over 5. So we are and halfway to another pi would be 2.5. So we're all the way over to here into the 4th quadrant. Question 3 is asking us to convert degrees to radian measure. So when we start with degrees, we want to end up with radian measure. So we are going to take and multiply by pi over 180 so that the degrees cancel out. And that multiplies to be and reduces to be 5 pi over 12. Cancel out a 5, and you get, I'm sorry, cancel out a 15 and you get 5, and cancel out 15 here and you get 12. So we're canceling out a 15 out of both. Question number 4 says convert 8 pi over 9 to degree measure. So this case, we're going in the opposite direction. We're going to multiply by 180 over pi so that the pi's cancel. And 9 goes into 180 20 times. And so 8 times 20 gives us a degree of 160 degree angle. Okay. Question number 5 says find the reference angle for 7 pi over 6 and then compute exact values of sine and cosine. So the reference angle for pi over 6 always goes along the x-axis. And this is pi and 0 and 2 pi. And so we're just over pi. We're just past pi because 7 pi over 6 is the same as 6 pi over 6 plus 1/6 pi. So this is 1 pi, so we're here plus another 1/6 pi this way. And so your reference angle always goes up to the x-axis. So this is the reference angle here, is the pi over 6. That is our reference angle. So that means we're in the 3rd quadrant. So in the 3rd quadrant, sine at 7 pi over 6 is negative 1/2 when we look at our sheet. And cosine of 7 pi over 6, or the reference angle of pi over 6, which is a 30-degree angle, is also negative, but it's a negative square root of 3 over 2. And that's on our sheet that we created. So I would definitely recommend having the sheet with all of the reference angles and what the 6 trig functions are at each of those reference angles. Number 6 says, given that cosine t is a negative square root of 2 over 2, and that the terminal side of t lies in the third quadrant, find the exact values of sine and tangent. Okay, so let's just draw this. It's in the third quadrant here. Okay, so when we draw it, it's always a right angle going to the x-axis. Whatever angle you draw is always going to the x-axis. And so we're always referring to this angle coming from the origin. Okay, so some of you on your homework, the way you've been drawing it is not correctly drawn. And so you're kind of off a little bit on some of your calculations, on your ratios. And let's just remind ourselves that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Okay, and so cosine, they're telling us here, is a negative square root of 2 over 2. But that's really because we've rationalized. So it really was a negative 1 over the square root of 2, but we rationalized to get here. And cosine, remember, is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that tells us that cosine, it's x is a negative 1. It's always the adjacent side. And the hypotenuse is the square root of 2. Okay, and so we can find sine, the y value here, by using the Pythagorean theorem of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Or we know that, so we've got negative 1 squared plus b squared equals the square root of 2 squared. Okay, so we know that b is going to be the square root of the square root of 2 squared minus a negative 1 squared. So b is going to be the square root of the square root of 2 squared is 2 minus 1. So b is equal to the square root of 1, which is going to be 1. So sine is the opposite. So it's 1 over, so we're going down 1. So sine is 1 over the square root of 2, but it's also a negative 1 because it's in the third quadrant. Sine and cosine are both negative there. So sine of t is going to be a negative 1 over the square root of 2, which means it's going to be the same as cosine t. It's going to, when you rationalize it, it is a negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay, and tangent t is the opposite over the adjacent. So that one, we don't even need to get the square root of 2 involved. It's just the opposite negative 1 over a negative 1. So that should just be a positive 1. So sine t is the negative square root of 2 over 2, and tangent t is equal to 1. So catch me back for the next round of problems.